I'm Rick from Cartouche Classic Cars. On this video, we're back on a 69 Firebird, and we're going to try to install some mini tubs for the back of this car. We're going to get them cut into place. You see, I did prep some of this stuff. What I ended up doing, a lot of times I do mini tubs and we'll install the USCAR tool kit, Detroit Speed. Both of these companies make really good kits, really good templates with lots of measurements. I decided to go with these pre-built mini tubs versus TIG welding them. They're already put together, so I'm going to try something a little bit different, see how I like them, see if it's easier, if it's harder, and we'll see where it goes. So what I end up doing, these are how they came out of the boxes. We have the left side and the right side, and what I did, I had my kids help me, and we made some templates, some cardboard templates, where the mini tubs would install on the factory car right here. So I made this template, then what we ended up doing, I transferred this template to the car, and we basically added the 2 3/4 inch, what I believe these tubs would be, the difference on width-wise versus the factory wheel housings. I also had them clamped up here, and I measured from here to where the tub stuck out, and that also measured 2 3/4 inches. So we're gonna wing this a little bit. We're gonna cut a couple times at least on this side, just to make sure and see where we're at, so we don't cut too much and have to come back and repair some stuff. So stay tuned, I'll show you my plan on this, and hopefully it'll help you out and give you some tips and tricks if you're installing mini tubs. All right, so you see we had the template, like I said, painted in place where I think about this wheel tub's gonna finally end up. What I'm worried about on this car, not worried, but what we have to look at is, you see the stamping on the trunk pan to the floor pan is off. The other side is dead on. I mean, it does curve out a little bit too. But what I want to do, I also wanted to verify, it's hard. We took our line down here, and we took one up here in the back for our 2 3/4, like I said, our measurement. Now, it's hard to tell in the center where we take our 2 3/4 inch measurement, since we want this to be a straight line. We don't want this curving in or curving out. So what I did, I took a laser pretty much, carpenter laser basically, and I put it in this area, and I connected my front and rear 2 3/4 inch lines. And you can see that's about right where we're at. You can see for the most part where I put my tape and painted it, it works. So we know that's basically straight. What I'm going to do now to be safe, we're going to take this 1/2 inch tape, and we're going to run the 1/2 inch tape on the edge of our line, and I'm going to make sure we cut right here first. We're going to take this as just take a little bit off of it first. We're going to test fit the tub in place and make sure everything looks good before we start cutting more. So let's go ahead, we're going to tape this up, and we'll come back, and then we'll start actually cutting some of this metal out, and I'll kind of test fit the tub. We'll cut a little bit, test fit the tub, and we'll get some measurements. We got the cutout wheel now, and we're going to go ahead and start ripping down the inner edge of our tape line. This would be a different story if I was 100% sure, or I've done this tubs, used these templates before, and I knew exactly where I was going to cut them. Or like I said, I do Mopars and the mini tubs a lot more on them, so I kind of get a good idea from the templates on the USCAR tool and stuff where we're cutting. These first gen F bodies, I did one years and years ago, but I did it with the quarters in the car. So really, we're going to just take a little bit at a time. We're going to hold the wheelhouse back in there as you see right now and see how it fits. So if you look at this, see, we still got to come in a little bit. I mean, we know that because we cut obviously a 1/2 inch on our mark. And looking at how everything is, this wheel tub's actually curved in, which makes me think our lines are pretty much spot on. So now that we got a pretty good test fit here, you see I also moved these brackets here up. I just bent them up because they're obviously have to be trimmed down because they're in the way of the wheel tubs. But we don't want to worry about them right now. Like I said, we're going to go back right now. I'm going to cut the rest of this line now that I know I'm pretty much where I want to be. I'm going to follow it and get it trimmed up, and I'm not cutting the frame. You see, I've just taken the frame notching for the most part and ignoring it and worrying about this top area first. We'll let the bottom hang out and we'll get to that part later. So let's get this cut again all the way, and then hopefully this wheel tub will just fit right in there. If this does fit really well, I might go ahead and just cut the other side right where my 2 3/4 inch line is, knowing that they should be pretty accurate, or at least right up to it, and I'll just grind it down to clean it up a little bit. So let's get to some more cutting, and then we'll see how this thing fits after that.
If you're doing a 69 F-body car and you're installing mini tubs, I would recommend cutting the passenger side first. I think it's the easier side to trim up versus the driver's side. You can see on the curvature here, I'm just using an air saw to try to just get the arc a little better that the cutoff wheel couldn't get in. You could use plasma cutters. There's different ways to cut these out. What you want to do, you just want a clean, precise cut. That's why I'm not using the plasma going down the actual the whole length of the wheel housing. I just think the cutoff wheel is going to get a much cleaner, straighter cut that I don't have to prep as much. I'm removing now the inner structure because all this stuff is in the way of the wheel housing. Also, you can see the frame rail areas. I'm leaving the bottom of the frame rail like I said, and I'm notching the top area where I know the tubs are going to slide into place to just make sure we have clearance and check our fitment up top first. And then we're going to match the bottom of the frame rail. I'll show you in a little bit. With the top, I'll show you how that's going to go. Same thing as last time. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fit the wheelhouse in the car and clamp it into place.
All right, so as you can see back here, once we push it, it fits really well. Same thing with right here. So all we're gonna do, we're gonna end up pushing this seam in, but you see everything along, you can't see this side, the pad fits really good. We're lined up all through this whole area, and we're pretty much split in the back right down the center. So I'm really happy with how the outer skin, the top floor, is cut out with this wheel housing, and I think it's going to fit really well. So let's go ahead now and start trimming the frame rails and figure out where we're going to end up cutting and finish kind of getting our frame rail area prepped, and then we'll take it on the next step. So at this point right now, we know this top lip right here, all the way down, for the most part, is lined up and where we want our wheel tub. The problem is now, and the wheel housing fits because you see I just cut this area out. I didn't cut the bottom yet because that's gonna, we want basically the bottom frame rail to match this top curvature where it comes in, and then it's going to be blended because you see the frame rail curves in while the floor comes out. So the only part we're notching the frame rail is back here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to basically just take, you know, a ruler lined up on top, and we're going to end up just tracing that bottom rail. So that's at the minimum where we're gonna cut. And again, this is gonna be one of those rough cut deals that we're gonna get it and we're gonna come back through, cut it, grind it, and just make sure it's level and looks good and is gonna have our tire clearance. So basically, if we connect the dots, we're looking at, there's our line there. So we're gonna cut that out. It joins up here, and then kind of, we're gonna blend this area somehow. Again, this isn't like a set in stone thing. Do it how you want it to look good. A lot of it is gonna be hidden, so we wanna keep the structure here, so we are gonna have to plate something. Aesthetically speaking, we want especially this area to look good because that's where, if someone does look under there, you're gonna see it. So let's go ahead and cut this area out with a cutoff wheel, and then we're gonna come back through with, actually, you know what? We're gonna use the plasma on this. I'm gonna use the plasma, then come back through with the grinder and just clean it up a little. So let me go get the plasma. I think just cutting that curvature will be a little bit easier, but you could do it with a cutoff wheel, Sawzall. Again, many things that you can use to do it. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll take it on to the next step.
This might be obvious, but if you're using a plasma cutter or an oxyacetylene torch for cutting, you really need to wear a dark shaded, specifically like these are, a plasma glass, which are it's a little bit less of a shade than a welding helmet to protect you from the UV, but it's still, you need that eye protection, because if you look at the plasma long enough, you're really going to hurt your eyes and they'll start burning for a while.
All right, so you see for the most part, it's still kind of cut in a little bit. What we're gonna do, we're gonna take the leveled end, and you see how it's kicked out. Now I'm gonna go back with the grinder and basically keep grinding it till we get this straight up and down, and it looks really good. I'm gonna do that all the way around to this point, and then we're gonna work our way forward, and I'm gonna figure out what we're gonna do with this transition period right here, because you see, we're not cutting into the frame rail here. So we're gonna do this area first, finish getting this looking really good, and then we'll work on the front.
So like I said, now that I got the grinder, I purposely cut the plasma with extra room to spare, knowing I just want a cleaner look, because the plasma, I kind of get a shaky hand sometimes, so as I'm cutting, you'll actually see each one of those, marks where I move my hand. So this allows me to get a real smooth flowing, nice clean edge.
All right, you see at this point we got this whole bottom section ground down where I wanted to. Everything's pretty much flush with the top. I'm kind of happy with what we're gonna do. So right now you see this jig piece is also in the way. What we're gonna have to do when we're welding this, I'm gonna just weld around it. We're gonna put a mark on this, and then when we actually cut this jig piece out or lift the car off the whole jig, that's when we'll come back through and we're gonna have to address these issues. I wanna make sure frame rails don't move. I want the car, I'm really happy with how tied down the car is and how easy it is to build. Now this frame jig piece will come out as soon as we start clamping these wheel tubs in place, because that's going to hold this whole area. So that's not a big deal, but like I said, this one will stay for a little bit. So we can use, like I said, those Detroit speed kits, the USCAR tool kits. They're actually 3 inches wide, if I remember right when I do it. So the kit we're using right now with the wheel houses, they're a 1/4 inch narrower, so they're 2 3/4 inches from our mark. So saying that, I think if you were going to use a Detroit speed kit, and they come with the plates and everything, the plates blend, if I remember right, this whole area a little bit better as in one piece. So what we're going to do, I think, to make this look the best how I want it to look on this side at least, we're going to take this section as a piece. I'm gonna weld up this area, and then there's gonna be a second patch in here, and we're gonna kind of just follow the edge of the frame rail. You could bring it out to here, which would look good, but you're gonna have this lip sticking out on the wheel housing up here no matter what. So whether it sticks out up here and then blends either here or blends here, to me it's all the same. So like I said, we're gonna go ahead and make some templates. We got some cardboard first. We'll use this one. We'll use a straight edge on the bottom since that's the one that we use. So basically we're gonna use our 16 gauge the same way. We're gonna bend it first, and again, you could use cardboard, you could use tracing paper, construction paper, however you make your templates. This is basic metal work. We're not doing anything crazy here. It's gonna be 16 gauge flat steel that we're gonna make our templates out of. And I'm gonna take my hammer. How I'm gonna do it, since we have it down there, I'm gonna just go ahead and tap the top right across, and that's gonna make our line where we're gonna end up cutting. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can actually see it pretty much cut it at that point, right there. So that's gonna be our line. I got some scissors right here. So it's gonna be the easy piece that we're gonna end up fabricating. I think the other side's gonna be a little bit more complicated, but we'll get there. I'll show that part, how I'm gonna end up doing that. We'll time lapse the wheel tub cutting and everything, since it's gonna be the same process as this side. So that goes in there. Let's see where we're gonna look on that. So we're looking, let me get my marker. We'll probably looking about right there. Looks like a straight up and down line. So let's cut it a little bit longer first. Make sure. Okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So we'll start trimming it back a little bit. Good thing about the cardboard, you keep experimenting with the cardboard over and over again. It's a lot easier to work with, especially with how big the boxes are. They ship all this stuff in. So and we'll transpose the cardboard onto our metal template and just cut them out. Yeah, I think we're gonna start off with that. So that's gonna be our first piece, our template. I'm actually, yeah, no, I'm really happy with that. Because we're actually gonna put it on the top and we're gonna weld down on this. Actually, no, we're gonna trim it back a little bit. I take that back. So we're actually gonna trim it back because I'm gonna weld on the top on the wheel tub. That's how I like to do my wheel tubs. You could leave a lip. I've seen people, you leave the lip and fold them down. To me, I like to weld these things, and I kind of like the solid weld across the whole top. I think personally, when it's covered with seam sealer, I think it looks better. So, yeah, we'll do that. I'll trim it. I'm gonna come back, we're gonna trim it a little bit more, but that's how that piece is gonna go. So, the second piece, our template, like I said, it's gonna be right there. So let's go ahead and tap that on. All right. Cardboard trick works pretty good with the hammer. You see, it's pretty much cut out. Now we're gonna have to go back and trim it a little bit more, but so that should fit, like I said, right in there. That's our idea. So now we got to figure out where we're going to trim. I see how we're going to do it. So now we're going to do the same thing on the frame rail right here. All right, let's see if that worked. Who knows? We're just winging it. Custom fabrication. Yeah, so I think the transition there looks pretty good. I think this area, yeah, so this area, let's trim this back a little bit. This is kind of, so we're going to trim the bottom up on the whole thing. And like I said, this area, I'm going to just weld that. There's no sense in putting a piece of cardboard there. So we're going to trim that to there. Yeah, that'll be good. We're going to trim the bottom up a little bit more. Just because, like I said, I kind of want to weld right under it and have a little bit of a gap there. And now when we're doing our templates, we know we have to cut the whole line off as we're tracing them out, because the line is further past our template. So yeah, I think I'm happy with that right there. I think once we put that in there, and actually what I'm gonna do, you see how it's kind of pushed out a little bit right here on this area? We're gonna grind that area back to get this area flush. See how it's kind of moving back and forth? So it's gonna kind of go, actually no, we're not gonna do that. I lied. So I actually kind of like that, how it goes right there. So we're gonna kind of end up welding this edge right there, and you see it's gonna kind of slowly come out a little bit. This area will be welded on the bottom, and right there, we're gonna leave that behind it. Now, what you can do, you could actually do this in two pieces if you wanted to incorporate this back area, and then weld that section and that section to get a better, solid inner structure. I'm not doing that, and the reason being, we're gonna end up cutting this top area. I don't want to give away too much, but we're adding not leaf springs to this car. So some more of this trunk pan is gonna be hacked up. I know we're gonna open this area up. I'm not worried about this piece right here. So take into consideration your entire build and your plan, and make do with these patches what you're gonna do. So we're gonna take these two patches. I'm gonna kind of fine tune them a little bit more, make sure our plan is gonna work. We're gonna transpose them onto the 16 gauge, cut them out, bring the metal back here, get everything cleaned up down to bare metal, because when we come back on this area, we are gonna start at least tacking and then fitting everything back up, and then we're gonna move on to the other side before we weld everything one time. So stay tuned and we'll get back to it.
So I hit a point where I'm really happy with how the passenger side's going to go. So we're going to turn our attention to me working on installing the driver's side. I'm going to show you this in time lapse, and we're going to try to just go over the process is similar. But as you can see in the 69 Camaros, Firebirds, they have the offset shocks in it. I believe 68 did too, but some expert out there can correct me. And I believe the 67s had the shocks going the same level. But you could see removing this side is a little bit harder, as it kind of splits the frame rail, and the frame rail attaches over the trunk support cross rail and everything. So there's a lot going on this side. So you see it was easier for me to take the plasma cutter in. I did just cut this one time. I didn't do the tape line and everything. I'm pretty confident on our 2 3/4 inch measurement that I just decided, you know what, it should work, we'll make it work. But you could see I'm kind of dissecting this one level at a time. So I removed that piece, then we're going to the inner frame structure. I'm also trying to plan for the future as I'm removing it, how I'm going to blend in my frame rail patches and what I'm going to do there. Like I said, we're kind of trimming out the bottom, knowing as we fit the wheel arch in there, the wheel housing, that I'm not worried about the bottom where it will clear, but we can get it in there to test fit and keep trimming. I did the same process where I drew the line on the bottom versus the top, and I'm cutting that arch in there right now. And then here we are with the cardboard templates. You can see what I did for the front template is very similar to the other side. On this one, we obviously have to make a larger piece to cover everything else. It's not just a one little frame rail area because where the old shock area went. Saying that too, if you're putting mini tubs in the car, you are going to have to relocate the shocks because we obviously just cut them out. So that's something else to consider on these cars, that you are going to have to figure out where you're going to relocate the shocks and everything else. And then same thing with the leaf springs. You're not going to keep a factory leaf spring in a car and put mini tubs. I mean, you can, but it kind of defeats the purpose because the leaf springs are in the way. So you really want to incorporate like an offset leaf spring, a 4-link, something in the back end that's going to give you that extra space along with just the tire room so you can move the tires and axles in. So as I said, I just put those cardboard templates down. I took a paint marker on the 16 gauge and I'm just cutting out the sheets. I'm cutting the whole entire line. And what I'm going to do, if I don't cut the entire line, it's not a big deal. I'm holding them up to a car and I'm going to come back and I'm going to just kind of grind the edges down and just fine tune them a little bit better before I go ahead and add weld through primer and everything else on these pieces. And we're going to come back and we'll show you how we're going to weld them on.
All right, so we got the whole area cleaned up. We put weld through primer on the back sides of the pieces and cleaned off the mill scale best we can on the front side given the time. So what I decided to do, I changed it up a little bit. This piece right here, you know, we had it curved in a little bit, but I was thinking I don't want this little gap right here on the wheel housing. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull it out, but that puts a little gap down there. So what I'm going to do, we just made this little triangle piece, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it right there. We're going to tack it in place. Actually, we're going to weld this one first, and then that should seal up this piece and make it a little bit cleaner. I will say I'm kind of running low on welding gas, so we're going to try to weld the hard parts with the MIG welder. If I have to, I'll either TIG weld the rest of it, or we'll just come back. It's the weekend now, whenever the welding supply store's open, and finish the job. But let's see what we got.
We're going to go ahead and just put a couple tacks in this piece and just make sure we're happy with the fitment.
All right, so that piece is tacked. It looks good on the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna weld this piece because then we won't get to the inside. I might go through the bottom again and re-weld it just to make everything cleaner on both sides. But I'm gonna weld this real quick.
This is really the only piece that I'm going to completely weld in. Everything else we're going to try just tack in place and then fit the mini tubs, because what we don't want to weld this all up and then find that the piece just offset something it doesn't fit right.
So we're gonna come back to that. The inside's welded. I'm not even bother cleaning it up. It looks good. It should be good for when we're ready to go ahead and, we don't have to clamp the inside. So actually we're gonna come back to this piece right here because I want that to dry or cool down, and I wanna add a little bit of weld through primer on there before I seal it up. I did spray weld through primer all up in this whole area. Like I said, we're gonna open up later, but I feel like it's gonna protect it. So let's go on to here. We'll go on to the other side, then we'll come back and finish tacking this last piece up. So this piece, real simple. I put in a box brake and I just kind of bent it up in 5 different levels to just kind of simulate that arch. There's many ways you could do it. Hammer it over a rear axle, anything round, a pipe, but whatever works for you. So you can see we're just gonna tack this piece on. We're really tacking everything on right now because what I wanna do, I wanna make sure everything works good, and we wanna be able to put the wheelhouse back on this car and make sure it fits before we do our final weld up. So let's go ahead and tack in a couple spots where we know we want it.
Now all welders gonna be slightly different. I do gotta say I'm using 030 wire on this. I'm putting little tacks and I'm running the heat a little bit higher. Actually, with all this frame rail pieces, I'm gonna run my heat a little bit higher. That's a personal preference for mine. I think when I get the weld a little bit hotter, we don't obviously have to worry about warping any of this metal, that it gets better penetration on these frame rail pieces, and all in all, I think the weld looks better and I could be more aggressive when I'm cleaning down the weld, knowing I'm not just cleaning the top area off.
All right, so we're gonna take a little cutout and we're gonna go do the other side, like I said, while we're waiting for that to cool down. All right, same thing on this side. Now, you see I did cut that area out, and that's to give us support behind it. And really the idea behind what I want to do, I want this whole piece to kind of flow. It's not gonna be completely factory, but I want someone to look at it, and if they don't really know what they're looking at, I don't want it to look like it's out of place or anything, or to stand out. That's the whole idea, how I'm trying to do, how I like to do the wheel tub. So let's go ahead and get this thing tacked in. You kind of see, I did want to just do it one piece and kind of blend in to the other frame rail, like I said, just to make it just flow better. So we'll tack the front first.
The reason here I'm going to start with the front is, to me personally, the front edge right there is the most important as far as blending the frame rail into the patch piece. Then I went to the back top corner just to make sure those two are going to blend in real nicely. Again, these are all going off of where we're limited on our wheel tubs. That curvature should match that wheel tub, and it should butt up against this whole entire area flush. So I did this, I could have done this whole area in one piece and flowed it right around, but I really just think personally I can do this with 2 pieces and actually make it look like it's supposed to be 2 pieces with the factory, how it comes out. It just, to me, made more sense. Now, saying that, the wheel tub is going to run flush with this whole side, so we're going to put rosette welds along the bottom, and they're also going to weld into this plate steel. So really, when it's all said and done, this thing, you're only going to see a small portion of all the work here.
All right, so you see how that one, the idea what I was trying to do with it blending, I just want to roll right around. Again, we're not going to weld this in until we test fit the wheel tubs. And then this one is going to go right over that, and we're going to tack it in right now.
You can really see in general the benefit of using cardboard. I mean, there's one little gap in the top corner where I probably, arched the curvature wrong with the cutoff disc, but all in all, these pieces, they didn't take a lot to really fine tune and fit really well.
All right, so what we're gonna do right now, actually we're gonna go back, I'm gonna finish tacking that other side. You saw what I was doing there. I'm gonna put the primer on it. Then we're gonna come back through. We're gonna test fit the wheel housings. We're gonna mark the wheel housings where we gotta ground them down to add weld through primer. And then we'll come back and time lapse the whole welding of this area and take it from there.
So as I said, we already had the wheel houses fit in place with the mini tubs. What I did, I took a paint marker and I basically circled everywhere. I make marks where I'm going to put rosette holes and where we're going to end up welding all these mini tubs in the car. We're not going to go ahead and weld them yet. We have to put further parts on there, but I'll go ahead and show that process of us final fitting them up and what they look like in the very end. Now that we did that, we'll go ahead and you see I'm just running a weld right across this whole thing. I'm picking and choosing. I would, like I said, weld this probably a little bit different if I didn't know I wasn't running low on 101 argon mixed gas. But like I said, we did make it at the very end. I could see my bottle was leaning out and it was slightly affecting the weld quality, but I was okay in the long run. I just kept turning up the dial and we got the job done. But good, it's hard to see right here, but what I'm doing in the time lapse, I'm basically running short little bursts. So with this frame rail material, I'm holding the penetration down and I'll keep dragging it right till I think it's gonna blow through, and I stop, let it cool, and I come back on the trigger. That's what I kind of do with this whole process. You know, if I know I could run a straight consistent weld and get good penetration, that's what I'm going to do. But on this frame rail stuff, when you're on the floor pans especially, that's a lot thinner metal and you want to blow through on the 18 gauge versus 16 gauge. I'm also focusing most of my heat on the 16 gauge and basically dragging it up to the 18 gauge, if that makes sense. So just take different pieces of metal and practice. Well, like you said, the main thing here, you want good penetration in the long run.
So I was real lucky. I just ran out of welding gas as I was putting in the last couple welds on this thing, so we didn't have to pull out the TIG welder. So saying that, you see I did grind everything down and kind of just make everything look better and smoother. You see what we got. Everything's kind of a smooth transition from the frame rail coming up all the way back. And there's a couple spots you could see that there is some weld there. The reason I want to show you this is we're about to put all this in weld through primer, and then we'll go ahead and assemble that the mini tubs. And when we assemble the mini tubs, you're going to see, I'll show you a picture of it, all this won't even be exposed. The mini tubs are mostly focused here and around this area. So this is what we got. This is the metal plating. This is why I like doing my own. I think personally for the application, you get to customize it better and just make what you want, what's more appealing to you. So let's take a look at the other side, and then we'll go ahead and I'll finish out this job and come back for some final thoughts. Same thing on this side. We took the frame rail, we worked it right back, and you see right here was the weld. It's blended so well that really you have to be looking for this, especially when it gets epoxy primer on it, weld through primer, all the different primers and paint on it. This is going to blend really nice on this frame rail for the areas that you're going to see. Capped off this area, and like I said, we are going to open this top area up for a future part of it. So this is what we got. Like I said, let's get to cleaning everything up and wrap up this video.
So now that we had both the mini tub wheel housings test fit into place, we're going to go ahead and prep them, because what we want to do, we want to assemble them on the car. And even though we might have to move them in the future and we're not welding them yet, I really don't want to take these wheel tubs out of the car if they're in the right spot. So once we get the whole entire structure on the car, we're going to hopefully these things will be just weld in place. This should be the last time they come out of this car. You can see I made blue marks everywhere I have to clean the metal up to. That's going to be butt in between two panels and needs weld through primer. I'm using an 80 grit on a surface prep disc here. You can see this area to get behind that back lip. I actually take this grinding wheel and I turn the disc pad around backwards with, again, 80 grit, and I just run through the area because it's kind of hard to get up in there and make sure it is bare metal. We're going to be, you see there's no rosette holes in a lot of these spots. That's why I'm going to use my spot welder. I didn't use it on this video, but normally we'll just pinch weld just like the factory would, so it makes it a little bit cleaner. There is certain areas we will have to put rosette holes in them and actually weld ourselves. So it's a mixture. You go back and forth, and when you do enough of these cars, you kind of know where you can get, where the spot welder becomes more of a hassle and where the MIG welder can be more efficient, and you just kind of use whatever tool works best. Same thing with cutting this stuff, prepping this stuff. There's multiple ways to do this. You just find out what works within best to your own capabilities. At this point, this is the last time, hopefully, we're going to install these mini tubs. You could see when I push them up how it kind of lifts up and down the whole back of the car. It is braced about where we want it, but that's what I was saying. So we don't want to weld these things because this is really going to determine the angle of the quarter panels and the whole tail section on the car in relation to the door panels. So what we want to clamp these about where the car came off, and then once we test fit everything and we're good to go, then we can go ahead and weld these pieces in first before the outer structure skin. So if you're doing mini tubs or wheelhouses, don't weld them in.
All right, so wrapping up this video on the mini tub install on the 69 Firebird, you could see everything's clamped into place. Everything has weld through primer. We did not weld the wheelhouses, the mini tubs, to anything on the floor or the structure here. What we're gonna do on the next video is we're gonna start putting the outer structure on the tail panel, the trunk, the deck filler, a lot of the structure in here. And before we do anything with these tubs, we have to make sure everything else fits. We might have to adjust them up or down, and so if we weld them right now, that would be a problem. So I just got everything clamped and screwed into place. You see we did weld the frame rail areas in the back, sealed them up, and then protected them with the weld through primer. Now, these wheel mini tubs, I actually did look it up right now, right before I close out the video. They're only supposed to be 2.5 inch wider than stock. They're from AMD, and they were, I think it was $150 per side that came with the inner and outer wheel housings. The good thing is, I mean, did we save money? I mean, we're going to compare them to the Detroit Speed 69 Firebird Camaro 3-inch or 2 3/4 inch wide mini tubs. They're not 3 inches, and that's what, $450 for the plates, and then that just comes with the inner wheelhouse. You would still have to buy the factory outer wheelhouse and put it together. I mean, it's apples and oranges. They both work. Like I said, I think the Detroit Speed kit does make things a little bit easier with their templates. Everything just kind of fits in place. You saw here we were able to kind of custom do some stuff, and the whole idea behind this video and why I want to do it this way was you could pretty much make any kind of mini tub for your car. Let's say you only want a 1-inch wide mini tub, something that's just almost looks factory, but you just want that extra little bit of tire in there. You could sit there and take, you know, most of the mini tub kits, like if we do them on the Mopars, the USCAR tool, we'll take a strip of metal that's supplied with the kit, and you could basically cut down the middle of the factory wheel housing right here, and you can add, let's say you want, say this is 2.5 inches, you could add this strip down the middle, moving it over, build your own mini tub on a car that, let's say they don't provide a mini tub kit for, and then follow our directions from the beginning, making your pattern, measuring everything, and there you just made your own mini tub kit. So I think there's definitely a place for doing mini tubs like this, not using the kit. Like I said, I kind of went with a little bit, I didn't need the biggest tires in the back. I like the whole fact that the wheel houses were put together. I think it would save some time, and personally, I like to make some parts, and I think it came out just as smooth. You could see looking at underneath this, we don't see a lot of the exposed work that we did, like I said, on both sides, but in general, like I said, I'm really happy with it. I think it's going to be pretty strong. We got future plans for the rest of the rear suspension to incorporate our mini tubs and what we're doing with the rear axle. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a video down the road. Saying that, I know I get a couple comments on this car saying, you know, when's the next video come out? When's it coming out? And I really appreciate the interest in everything. This is kind of a side project. This car, you know, isn't a way of making money. You might think I make a ton of money on YouTube, but it pretty much goes all directly into camera and editing software. So I'm not a professional YouTuber making a living on this. I'm kind of just doing this car for fun, putting the videos out there, help others, showing what I can do in the shop. But so we are going to keep putting videos out in this car. They're not as fast. You probably see in the background a lot of other cars change, go in and out, and other projects take precedence over this car. So stay tuned. I'm putting out the videos consistently on the Firebird. We are going to do the whole build on this car. It's going to be one video every now and then when I have time. So thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this video helped you out on, I mean, if you're building any car with any kind of mini tubs, maybe you get something out of it, maybe a tip or trick. Share with other people, like our videos, comment please. We're open for feedback and opinions on how you're doing mini tubs, floor pans, stuff that we're doing on the channel, and subscribe to our channel. So thank you very much. I'm Rick from Cartridge Classic Cars, and we'll see you on the next video.